I'm Anna,
I'm Jessica.
and this is the Paranoia pair.
What are you doing?
Nothing. There was a little jumping spider on my wall.
Did you kill it?
No.
Not the jumping spider.
It jumped. It's just chilling. But I didn't want to alarm you because I know
No, I'm okay with jumping spiders to an extent.
it's a tiny little teeny one. It's cute.
We had one in our bathroom. I think it was 2 days ago. I didn't know what it was, and I had an upset stomach because I was stressed out. And I went in there, and like the toilet's there, and then the wall's right here, and the spider was right there. And I went out and I said, I can't live in these conditions. I said, I cannot have tummy troubles with a spider 2 inches from my face.
Don't try.
You'll go first.
Do I go first? Okay. This one is from the subreddit Humanoid Encounters, and it's titled Evil Has a Face. This is long, but everything pertains to what happened and possibly why it happened. So, this happened many, many decades ago. Back in the early to mid 80s, before cell phones and internet. I have no way to prove this to anyone, but I will say that even at my age, I still have nightmares about this encounter. At 13 years old, I ended up going to live with my mother after being raised most of my life by my grandmother. Her health was failing, and I think she was protecting me from what was coming, her death. My mother and stepfather lived in a trailer park located in a small town. I grew up 40 minutes from this town and never knew it existed until my mother took me to live with her. There was only maybe about 80 trailers in this whole place. It wasn't huge, and it butted up next to the local canal. I was one of only 6 kids in the park, so I had very few options for friends. One friend, Jeff, lived behind our section, and my other friend, Melissa, and her family lived at the very end, straight down from where I was located. The place was shaped like a lowercase h. So I meet Jeff, who was just a few months younger than me, and we hit it off. We rode bikes and went exploring, and he was fairly new to the area as well, and he was a good guy, smart and funny. Well, there was a trailer just up from the tip of the H, which was also the opening of the chain link fence to reach the canal, so we passed by it all the time when we would go to the canal to swim or just to go walk. When I say red, I mean like old farmhouse barn red, and it was long and had a whole section built onto it, making it go from a single wide to a double wide trailer. Well, as far as Jeff and I knew, no one lived there. It was empty, and the older lady who lived next to it said it belonged to a man who lived in the Bay Area. It says in parentheses. It says, I live in California. Which, even to a couple of dumbass kids, seems odd. The Bay Area was easily 2 to 3 hours away from us. So, no surprise when the idiot patrol decides, oh, hey, let's go inside and check it out. Yes, we were stupid, but we did it anyways in broad daylight, which would make me feel better.
Yeah, but also broad daylight. Why? You know someone owns it, and you're going in broad daylight?
The front door was a large sliding glass door, and I mean large by the standard. We waltzed right into the enclosed porch. We should have walked right back out, but as I said, we were stupid. For some reason, me and Jeff stopped to look at amputated bird feet. Really big bird feet. Not chicken or even turkey. They were far bigger, and the claws were more predatory in nature. We turned to the front door, and it too was unlocked. Okay, so 2 dumbass 13-year-olds and an open door invitation, we walk right on in. The place was nice as hell inside, and I mean nice, as in it looked like whoever lived there just went to the store and would be back at any moment. This place had power, running water, and the fridge was stocked, but yet no one had been here in over 5 years. We know because we asked the older lady who had the key to the place, and there was never a car parked out there. So while the front room and the one bedroom up front looked lived in, we of course head for the back, all the while trying to figure out where the door to the added on full length room was, because we were nosy and wanted answers to lame questions. We found it in the second bedroom that looked like something out of a new age horror movie / porno. A ratty, disgusting mattress on the floor, Polaroids all over the place, at least 100 plus, and a cutout doorway to a pitch black windowless room that ran the length of the trailer from just behind the enclosed porch. It had one dresser about chest high, where Jeff was with his back to the black hole, I, on the other hand, was curious about the Polaroids laying around and started looking through them. I wish to hell I hadn't because I can never unsee what was in those. I won't go into detail, but they were taken in that room, and the one girl who's in those photos was dead. When it dawned on my innocent mind what I was seeing, I dropped the photos like they burned and turned to my friend who was saying something. I don't know what he was saying, but he was cut off by the most hideous evil laugh I have ever heard in my life to date. Since we were both looking at each other, we knew we didn't make that sound, and we froze like terrified puppies until I saw a large, and I mean fucking large, hand reach out of the darkness of that hole for Jeff's head. I have never screamed so loud in my life as I did then. I shoved Jeff, screaming, run, and he did. We cleared that trailer like our asses were on fire and literally leaped from the porch. We didn't even shut the doors. The old lady next door scolded us and we booked it. Jeff went to his trailer and I went to mine. It was the middle of June and I shook like I was inside of a deep freezer. If it wasn't scary enough, it gets freakier. My friend Jeff lived with his mom and dad and two little sisters. I want to say the girls were about 4 or 5 and cute as buttons. So 2 days later, I finally get the guys to go around the roadway. Said I had come into proximity of the red trailer to go see Jeff and maybe talk about what happened. I get to Jeff's and the trailer was empty, as in the entire family had moved out. I asked my mother's friend, who I called Grandma May, and she said that they threw everything into their van and left the night Jeff and I went into the trailer. I was shocked because just a few days before, his mom had been talking about getting Jeff enrolled at the same middle school I attended. So why leave so abruptly? What's even scary is about 2 weeks later, no one remembered Jeff or his family except me, and Jeff had been to my trailer to meet my mom and stepdad. Let me also clarify that no one believed me about the photos. I always regretted not taking the ones I had been holding with me. Jump ahead, and I started hanging out with Melissa and her friend. She was a year younger than me, and I was 14 at this time. She has 2 older sisters, Terry and Stephanie. They were both older girls, and they were amazing and treated me like another sister. Her parents were simply amazing, and Melissa was a sweet, gentle girl who never had a mean thought in her. But of course, to go there, I had to pass the red trailer. Every time I felt something watching me, which was pretty spooky given that there was no windows on that side. And it was the added on section to widen the trailer. So another summer evening, and I finally get the guts to tell Melissa's sister, Stephanie, about the trailer. So she decides, hey, let's go check it out. And I was like, no, I don't remember all of these years why, but I finally cave in and said fine, but not to go past the living room. We braved the place in the daylight, and that time I pay more attention to the bedroom to the right of the living room. It had a freaking queen-size waterbed, working lamps, and a full-size Confederate flag on the wall. I don't know why, but of all the things, that flag gave me shivers. Now Stephanie reached out to feel the waterbed, and it was warm, as in the heater for the water was active. She took my arm, and we huffed it out of there quickly. She and her family did not vanish, thankfully, but we left it at that. And I went on to get other friends and my first boyfriend, and we all spent a lot of time in the canal, which faced the only side of the red trailer that had no windows, and several times I swore I saw someone peering out at me. I'm skipping a few pieces because the story is so long already, and I want to get to the part that has genuinely haunted me for life. So at 15, I spent almost as much time at Melissa's as I did at home, and by that point, I had opened up about the red trailer and what I had seen, heard, felt, and feared. For some reason, I wore a blue dress with a flouncy skirt down to Melissa's. I can't remember why we got dressed up, but back then it was cool. And I walked down about 1 p.m. and we sat around chatting, doing teenage stuff. Now I had no intention of staying until dark, but somehow before I realized it, it was well after dark outside. Now remember, this is the 80s, so we didn't have street lamps every 2 feet. In fact, the only one we had was at the spot where the road curved into the hump of the H, which just happened to be across from the red trailer. For some reason, I was unreasonably terrified to walk back to that trailer alone and told Terry that since she was almost 18, she decided that she would walk me all the way past it, then make sure I was closer to home before they headed back. Feeling relieved, we headed out. It wasn't that far from their place, and I could see my porch from theirs. and vice versa in the daylight. So we passed through a trailer, come come adjacent to the trailer directly across from it. I cannot begin to explain the numbing skin crawling feeling that raked me from head to toe, but I literally froze in the middle of the road facing towards my home. It felt like I was forced to turn around and face the extremely tall and wide sliding glass doors to the trailer. All of us girls turn around, standing in the doorway was the biggest, scariest nightmare I had ever seen. I looked into the face of evil and it stared back at me. The first thing that struck me was how fucking tall it was, and it was ducking down to glare at us. Its lips pulled back off fangs that were glistening and damp from saliva. Its eyes were vivid yellow and the size of a closed fist, and its long claws made distinct tapping noises against the glass door that it was framed in. I tunnel visioned on that giant furry bipedal monster because to this day the only thing that I can describe best is it was a werewolf. It looked like a fucking werewolf, complete with rear articulated legs. I vaguely remembered hearing one of the others whisper, "What the fuck is that?" Someone else whimpered. Then I blinked and my friends were gone. They're back almost at Melissa's place, and I'm standing there under the lamp, frozen, like watching a car wreck. I had looked back at that thing and it was smirking at me. I'll never forget that huge clawed hand tilting as it used one finger to beckon me to it. To this day, I don't know how I broke that terror that held me in place, but I shook my head and turned running like my life depended on it. And most likely it did, if not my life, then maybe my soul. I went to my room and changed, crawled into bed shivering, and the next day, once the sun was bright and shiny, I scurried down to my friend's place and asked her about it. She and her sisters had no memory of walking me past the trailer or seeing the thing in the sliding glass doors. They asked me if I was drinking or smoking pot, so I let it go and just kept it to myself. Only a few people close to me know about the story, and one of them actually went back to the park with me as an adult, and the trailer was gone, but I didn't have to tell him where it was. He felt it. I was originally going to visit an old couple I owed my sanity to, but the feeling of dread and skin crawling was too much for us, so we left the trailer park. I have tried to find out about any unsolved deaths at that time frame, but I can't find anything. And yes, it could have been a joke with the Polaroid photos, but film was expensive back then, and there was hundreds of photos of this girl. I sadly never knew Jeff's last name, so I can't search for him and have long since lost contact with Melissa and her family. This has haunted me since I was 15, and she's 48 years old now. I know I shouldn't have trespassed, and I did bring that onto myself. And then she commented on the post and it says, actually reading your reply made me think of something. I did talk to my boyfriend's sister about it and actually witnessed something creepy in that trailer. She suggested that the trailer was put there because someone had a relative, maybe a son, because the room was very masculine in nature, and they did have emotional issues, and the family was maybe hiding their dirty little secret, which back then wouldn't be too far-fetched.
Yeah. So like the guy who owns it in Santa Fe was hiding his kid
Mm-hmm.
or like a brother or something.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry if it gives you trauma.
Honestly, why not add to the trauma that I already have?
Well, it might bring back some memories of your neighbor. This is our no sleep. And the title is I'm Not Convinced My Neighbor is Dead. I don't think my neighbor is dead. I mean, they should be. I saw the body. Let me back up a bit. I moved into this basement suite in the spring. Not the best place I've ever lived. The ceiling's so low I can press my palm flat against it without getting on my toes. Heating works when it feels like it. I've killed more spiders than I care to count, most of them crawling out of tiny windows that are supposed to let in light, but mostly just invite things in. But it was cheap and I needed cheap, so I took it. For a while, the upstairs was empty, quiet. I almost started thinking I got lucky, and then the new tenant moved in. Older guy, maybe in his 60s, gray beard, kind of wiry build, but hunched like he carried more weight than you could see. Never introduced himself. I only caught a glimpse of him once or twice, coming in and out. He kept to himself, which was fine by me. I'm not exactly the neighborly type. But even when I didn't see him, I heard him. But mostly at night, he'd walk. That's all. Just walk. Back and forth, over and over. Sometimes from midnight to 4 or 5 in the morning. The pacing never really stopped until the sun started coming up. You'd think he'd get on your nerves, but it was almost rhythmic. Predictable, at least at first. Then came the scratching. At first, I figured it was mice. This is the kind of place where you'd expect mice. It happened around 3 a.m. Little burst of sound, sharp and frantic, like claws on drywall. And always after the pacing stopped, he'd walk, then the scratching would start, like something was following him through the walls. I tried to ignore it until I started hearing the whispering. At first, it was so faint I thought it was coming from my phone. Just this quiet murmur above my head. Too muffled to make out. I turned everything off and I still heard it. I put my ear right up to the ceiling and held my breath. That's when I heard the words, "Let me back in." Over and over, the voice sounded dry, like wind blowing through old leaves. I don't know how else to explain it. The more I listened, the more wrong it felt. I stopped sleeping through the night. Coffee, podcasts, whatever. I did what I could to stay awake until daylight. It helped a little. Then, 2 weeks ago, everything stopped. No footsteps, no scratching, no whispering, just silence. Not peaceful either. The kind that makes you realize how loud nothing can be. It rang in my ears. I figured the guy had moved out, or maybe he'd passed away quietly. I thought about going upstairs, but I didn't want to get involved. I don't poke my nose where it doesn't belong. That changed a few days later when it started to smell. If you've ever smelled something dead, and I mean really dead, you know what I'm talking about. It's sour, coppery, and thick. It clings to your lungs. I couldn't breathe in the hallway without gagging. That's when I finally caved. I wrapped a towel around my face and went upstairs. The door was closed but not locked. I knocked, no answer, and I opened it. It was worse than I expected. The kitchen was wrecked. The upper cabinets were ripped from the wall, ripped, not fallen, and splintered like they'd been torn from the inside. The floor was stained with something black and sticky, not blood. Too dark, too thick. Drag marks led from the center of the room to the far corner, and there he was, bent backward in a way that no human body should bend. I don't mean hunched, I mean folded. His heels touched the floor, and so did his face. His spine arched up like a bridge, like something had pulled his head and feet towards each other and forced the rest to comply. His mouth was wide open like he died mid scream, but his eyes, they were shut, peaceful. That somehow made it worse. I backed out and called emergency services. They came fast. One of the responders took one look and had to step outside to puke. They asked me a bunch of questions, taped off the unit, and told me to stay out. I haven't slept much since. Last night, around 3 a.m., I woke up to the pacing again. The same rhythm, same sound, exactly the way it used to be, back and forth, slow and steady, directly above me. Then came the scratching, then the whispering. But this time it wasn't muffled, it was clear, right above my head. Let me back in. I lay there frozen, staring at the ceiling. I told myself it had to be in my head. Residual stress, maybe, sleep deprivation, something logical. Then came the thud. One single solid impact directly above my bed. Not a creak, not a drop, a thud, like something heavy slammed into the floorboards. This morning, I couldn't take it. I went upstairs. The police tape was still there, right across the door. No sign of tampering, except for one thing. Someone had left a note, stuck it right on the tape with a piece of blue painter's tape. Looked like it had been written with shaky hands. The note said, "The door is locked, but I remember the way through the walls." That was hours ago. I kept the lights on ever since. I can't bring myself to lie down. I don't know what I'll do if I hear it again tonight. I just needed someone else to know, just in case. The end.
This is from the subreddit Let's Not Meet. Something's off with the new guy. I was reading a story that reminded me of an event from over 20 years ago. In the second half of 1998, I had taken a job as a security guard at a plant that made locks. Being a kid, I usually worked one of the three shifts: 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., 7:30 p.m. to 3:30 a.m., or 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. The 7:30 to 3:30 shift was for extra coverage, so there was always two of us there from 7:30 to midnight, and it was a routine, boring job. For the most part, we did our rounds, logged anything out of the ordinary, and watched a tiny monitor displaying the CCTV feed. Things went by in an almost painfully normal manner for 6 months. I worked, saved, bought a car, and planned to move. By late March of '99, I served my notice and prepared to head across the country. A new hire was brought in to fill my spot, a soft-spoken man named Calvin. As part of his training, Calvin spent time working at all hours. At night, he was a shadow, working with myself and the other night guard, getting a feel for the plant's nocturnal routines. Most nights he worked with myself and Amira, a female guard who was around my age. I was 18 at the time. Calvin, who was about a decade older, was quiet, polite, though something seemed to be missing. There's a spark that genuinely nice people seem to have, and he didn't possess it. Whenever he went on rounds with me, he'd ask questions about the job and make small talk. I noticed that he was a little odd, laughing at odd times and changing his tone mid sentence.
Oh, okay.
At the time, I chalked it up to him being awkward, and that wouldn't last, though.
Oh, okay.
One night near the end of his first week, he went on the rounds with Amira. When they returned to the office, I knew something was wrong. Normally talkative, she would barely say a word. Not sure what had occurred, I waited until Kevin was gone to the restroom to ask. During their trip, everything had been normal until they reached the brass mill, a portion of the plant that had been shut down at 6 p.m. There were usually no employees there after that time and no lights. They were making their way to a checkpoint on a landing atop a flight of stairs when the mood had shifted. She told me that she turned around only to find that he was right on her. Startled, she backed against the grating at the end of the landing, and he leaned in towards her, his face narrowly touching hers. He flirted in a low voice, and when she mentioned his wedding band, he said it would soon be over.
Oh.
From then on, I did the rounds, taking Calvin with me each time. The night ended without further incident, and I left a note for our supervisor detailing what had happened. The next night came and went with no Calvin. I did the rounds while Amira stayed in the locked office. Same thing the night after. Then, on my second to last shift, I come in to find her freaking out. She found out why Calvin hadn't been at work. He had been arrested for murdering his wife. She had been dismembered and burned. Parts of her body was placed in a pond less than a mile from where we worked. The night and the next, Amira called the jail just to make sure that they were still holding him. Based on the time frame, he had killed his wife months before he started the job, and he actually shared an article about his arrest. Halifax County Sheriff's deputies have arrested a man in connection with the murder of his wife. Calvin Lee Brinkley is charged with first-degree murder in the death of Viola Brinkley.
Such a pretty name.
Brinkley reported his wife last August. In November, her skeletal remains were found in a pond north of Rocky Mount.
Does it have Calvin's mugshot?
Yes. Detectives say that SBI has been analyzing evidence for months, and they say that there is conclusive evidence that Calvin Brinkley murdered his wife, burned and dismembered her body, and dumped the body parts into the pond. I didn't think it was nobody else, says Nellie Taylor, the victim's mother. She says that she thought Brinkley was responsible since the investigation began, and it took investigators 8 months before they could charge him with murder.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. This one is from our paranormal. It's titled "I Saw Something in My Room and It Saw Me." For some context, in 2023, I was living in Ghana, Africa, teaching Christianity to the locals. Ugh. Something you should know about Africa, especially Ghana, the area I was in, is that there's a lot of black magic performed, often called juju there. I saw many things, such as people worshiping demonic things, sacrificing unclean humans, often because of them being gay or some other cultural sin. I've seen satanic things and felt many evil things in my time there. This is one of my most personal interactions with these things. The house I was staying in was not quite finished and not furnished nearly at all. So all the rooms in this story are nearly empty except for a few items and a single wardrobe in the bedroom. Me and my friend I stayed with was in the same room for this story. One night, me and my companion, who I was there teaching people with, were discussing some plans regarding people who requested us to visit them. During our discussion, he tells me that he's been having some complications sleeping. I asked him what he meant, as he seemed hesitant and off-put by what he was talking about. After a moment, he said, "The last couple of nights, I have been waking up with a terrible feeling that something is watching me. When I start to look around the room, I see this figure standing next to my bed, looking down at me." He was able to describe its features. I remember him saying it has rough skin, large eyes, and a large mouth. We went to sleep, and this is when I experienced one of the most terrifying events in my life. I had a dream that terrified me. I never get scared of my dreams or nightmares, so this was odd for me. I had a dream that we were in our main room of the haunted house, and I looked out the window that was about 9 feet off the ground outside. In the bottom corner of the window, I saw a face, large eyes with thin, strainy, long black hair. It was a girl, and we locked eyes. I think the best similarity I can name is that old internet trend Momo that was circling around. Fear and terror pierced through my body as an ear-piercing screech screeching noise fills the air. I then woke up in my room feeling disoriented and confused. Very quickly, that feeling changed to terror, dread, and fear. It felt as if something was in the room watching me. I could feel its hostile gaze on me, staring. I sat there for a moment, frozen in fear. Eventually, I looked up and saw something I could not quite explain. It was like a black hole of light, almost devoid of everything. A dark figure I could only make out shoulder and head, and the rest of the body was too dark to see. I could feel its presence, it was staring at me. After a moment of terror, I sat my head back down and tried to calm myself down. I thought to check the time to see if I was still awake or asleep. My watch read 3 a.m. on the dot. I stared at my watch for a bit, recognizing the significance of 3 a.m. After thinking about my companion's previous experience the nights before, my dream and what I saw at the time and the feeling I was getting, I came to the conclusion that this was really happening. I slowly put my head back down and tried to fall asleep for many hours, and eventually the feeling of its presence subsided. Now I was able to sleep. Since then, I've had a few experiences similar to this, but this was the most prevalent and the first. Edit for all of y'all who are saying it's sleep paralysis, I was moving around, checking my watch, rolling over, and sitting up. None of these are possible under sleep paralysis.
This one is from the subreddit True Scary Stories. Oh, I have to share you the username. Slim Jim 69. Okay. Okay. It's called My Childhood Friend. When I was a child, I had a friend named Lucy. She was a neighborhood girl who would come over to my grandmother's house, which was where I lived at the time. There was a park by my house that had a deep creek next to it. I couldn't swim, so we always had an adult with us when we were near the creek. Lucy was always a toxic friend, but I didn't know. I feel like you have to have at least one toxic friend in your childhood
canon.
to like, yes.
And if you're a girl, it's usually more than one.
I had two, and they were both friends with each other, and they poured spoiled chocolate milk all over everything in my locker, including my school books, and the school was going to make me pay to replace them. My very nice coat that was made out of
Was it the deerskin looking one that was real popular when we were kids?
Yeah. My very nice coat that I got for Christmas that my mom probably spent like an arm and a leg on. She got it all over that coat. I'm just like, oh my God.
Didn't we have cameras in that school?
Yes, I had one right in front of my locker, and they said, we're not going to go on the cameras. Okay. She would always threaten to stop being friends with me or stop talking to me if I didn't do what she wanted. She would also always say that she deserved my toys and my family and my friends more than I did. I didn't mind this as I had a hard time making friends, and Lucy was one of my only friends. One night, Lucy came over and she said she was bored and wanted to go to the park. I told her my family was in the backyard and we had to have an adult with us to go, but she said she would leave and never come back if I didn't go to the park with her. I followed her and we went to the park. She walked right past the playground equipment to the creek, and I asked her what she was doing.
She's a shoveling, isn't she?
I don't. She said she wanted to swim, and I told her I couldn't swim, and she called me a string of hurtful names, including weak, stupid, and an awful friend, and this really hurt my 5-year-old self. Oh my God, she's 5?
And I was thinking at least 10.
I was thinking at least 12.
Jesus.
So I started crying. This made her even angrier, and she told me something like, I'll never forget. You're an awful child. Your family deserves me and not you. I was so confused and sad that I just ran home. I never saw her again, and I just thought she was so angry she never really spoke to me again. Now, about a year ago, my family was talking about many of my imaginary friends, and my mom said my friend Lucy really creeped her out because she was supposed to have a daughter before me who she wanted to be named Lucy. Her mom had a miscarriage and Lucy was never born.
I think even if she was imaginary, because parents know about usually kids' imaginary friends, because kids are weird and they make them include the friend in things.
Mm-hmm.
So like she was probably down at the creek being like, Mom, Lucy wants to go swimming. Mom, me and Lucy, and the mom's like, okay, let me just grab my crucifix. Okay, here's my last one. It's from Our Ghost Stories. Titled Whatever It Was, It Sounded Like Our Moms, but it wasn't. When I was 9, we lived in a remote, forested military area. Can't disclose too much for privacy, but yeah, let's just say spotting elephants, deer, and the occasional predator was a normal part of life there. One night, there was a formal event that our parents had to attend and kids weren't allowed. So it was just me and my friend, let's call him Carl, both 9 years old, and our younger brothers, Sam and Duke, around 5, all made up names. We stayed at my place and decided to watch Shrek. It was late at night, pitch dark outside because of the forest, and eerily quiet. Suddenly, the lights went out for a few minutes, then came back on. We were standing near the windows when I heard Carl's mom calling out my nickname from outside. We lived on the second floor. It was a strange, raspy voice, not normal. And what made it creepier was that barely anyone knew that nickname. It wasn't something neighbors would know. Cindy? Cindy. I asked Carl if he heard it too. He looked freaked out and said, "No, but I heard your mom calling my name. Carl? Carl?
Carl.
That kills people." Sorry. Carl? We both froze. There was there was no way our moms were anywhere nearby. They were at the party, miles away, and we were alone in the house. The younger kids, Sam and Duke, said they heard the voices too. But us being 9 years old, we assumed they were just copying us or mishearing things as they were around 5 years old. We we were all terrified. We tried to distract ourselves with the movie and waited for our parents to come home. When they finally did, we told them, but of course they didn't believe us. They brushed it off as an imagination or a dream. We all eventually moved on. Fast forward almost 9 years later, Carl and I met again and we were reminiscing. I brought up that night, and to my shock, he remembered everything clearly. His brother Duke did too. My brother Sam only remembered bits and pieces, but it was enough to confirm we hadn't imagined it. I still don't know what we heard or why, but it wasn't normal. It wasn't just a prank or a dream. We heard each other's moms calling us in eerie voices when they were nowhere near us. To this day, I can't explain it. And the one comment says that this is a stalking mimic, and mimics scare the shit out of me. I get scared to like read about them because they scare the shit out of me.
That's how I am with the flesh
treaders.
Yeah, creeps me out.
That's kind of what that and the Wendy's. I don't like those either. That's what I imagine they were in that book I was telling you about at the cabin.
I have to tell you. So when we recorded our Ouija board episode, there was that hour-long silent pause that just got randomly added onto there because our podcast episodes are never, the recordings are never above 2 hours. But it was 3 hours long and it was just this random hour-long it wouldn't even play. I tried playing it to see if there was like anything weird. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Wouldn't even play it. So then I had to edit the episode 3 different times because random silent pieces would just get added into it.
Stop it.
No, I'm being so serious. I had to make sure that before I uploaded like the final copy that there was no silent parts. It was so weird.
That's so creepy.
It was so creepy. And I've never had that happen to any other episode ever. Like even when we lost internet connection, like I've never had anything like that happen.
It wouldn't be so weird if it wasn't for it being on the Ouija board episode.
Mm-hmm.
That's so creepy.
Like if it was any other episode, I'd be like, oh, this is weird. This random thing happened. But like the fact that it was the only time anything's ever happened to me like that.
Thanks for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook at Paranoia Pair Pod. And we will see you next Friday.
Stay spooky.